just take about 10 minutes. 10 seconds. That would be a long moment of silence, wouldn't it? About 10 seconds to picture that peaceable kingdom. Everybody you know is getting along. Everything you know is getting along. Someone shared with me on the way out of first service that they were walking along a culvert this week and a baby bobcat stuck his head out of the end of the culvert. And then they have owls in their backyard that got really wet in the rain. And it just thought of owls and bobcats and same place and family and being together. It's quite an amazing picture, isn't it? Now, sometime in the next week or two, if we haven't already, most of us will succumb to a combination of nostalgia, the pesterings of a child, and or cultural peer pressure. We will either put up a perfectly shaped Christmas tree from the box we keep in the garage, or we will venture out to some Christmas tree lot nearby where beautiful trees cut from groomed forests lure us with their fragrance and symmetry. Finding an endearingly scruffy Charlie Brown tree has become virtually impossible. Every tree you see has been pinched and pruned into a perfect isosceles triangle, just like some child's primitive drawing. Now, trees have always fascinated people. They have appeared in image and poem and story from the earliest days of human civilization. Trees have always stood as symbols of something larger and more enduring than the momentary flickers that make up a human lifetime. A tree can easily watch 3 generations of a family live and die. One bristlecone pine in California, estimated to be 4,600 years old, has been living on this planet since the days of the pharaohs. Little wonder that trees evoke such a sense of awe. So trees, awe, that feeds right into our understanding that we are Christians, and yes, we're ODD odd. Now, the early church, friends, it was both awed, A-W-E-D, and very odd, O-D-D. They were awed by the presence and power of God through the risen Christ. And they were really awed as they lived it out and shared with others, bringing together people like Jews and Gentiles, slaves and free, male and female, Republicans and Democrats all together in one loving community. That was certainly odd. And yet they cultivated this spiritual vitality and they reached new people with the love of Jesus Christ the same way we can do today in the midst of an atmosphere of hate and enmity and friction. We too can emerge as a community that shows the world that we are Christians, not by what we say, not by slogans we have posted on our signs, but by the love that we have for one another. That's odd and awesome. And frankly, I think when we start being a little bit odd, I believe that then we're going to have the kind of spiritual vitality that others want in their lives, and we will reach new people. So I invite us this week to claim our oddness out loud as we care, first of all, by God's earth, in our works as well as through prayer for its healing and restoration. Our Zero Waste team has a wonderful display out there for you to look today about some reusable ideas for Christmas presents. And then let's announce that we as United Methodists are really odd. I mean, we can imagine eliminating malaria for our brothers and sisters in other parts of the world through things like Imagine No Malaria and other programs.
We could lift up the Desert Southwest Annual Conference. For those of you who say, what on earth is that? Well, that's the governing body of which we are a part. Let's say, yeah, we are odd, because as a conference, we can discuss and disagree and still love one another. And we can imagine a world where racism is no more, where all people are fully included and accepted for who they are, no matter what. I think I'm going to keep going because this is really fun. We are so odd that based on the prophets of old, we do justice among the most vulnerable among us. And we are so odd that we believe that when we make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, we can be part of feeding the hungry. We are so odd that we continue to worship in the midst of life's disasters, bringing hope to ourselves and to the world. So odd that we do good in Christ's name. So odd that we believe we don't have to face life's difficulties all alone, that we have a supportive Christian community who cares for us when we are down, and we care for others when they are. Yeah, we're pretty odd. We believe that by bringing our whole selves to God, we can actually lead our neighbors to Christ, love one another in caring community, learn to follow Jesus, and then live a Christ-like life that serves the world in good times and in bad. When the world out there claims that Christianity is just about dead, and those times when we wonder if they could be right, we are odd and odd enough to just keep on keeping on. Which leads us back to our text from Isaiah. A shoot shall come from the stump of Jesse. Friends, that stump is dead. God had said it would be so. In the previous chapter, God declares punishment on the people of Israel. And he says the tallest trees will be cut down and the lofty will be brought low. The trees, the people, both will be clean cut off. And yet just a couple chapters later, these words come from that same prophet. A shoot shall come from the stump of Jesse. What does that word of promise mean for us as a congregation, as a group of people who desperately want to be the face of love in this world that has so much hate? William Barber II once famously said, those of us who have in our history the commonality of suffering from hate, we know that those who won the day are those who chose love in the midst of hate. So how can we be those kinds of people? You know, cracks are everywhere. And so I found this wonderful picture that I just want to share with you and leave up for a while. I do want to share it with you. The picture. There it is. You know, I see them when I'm out running or riding or cycling on the loop here in Tucson. We have them in abundance in our church parking lot. And I am guessing that you probably have a few cracks near where you live as well. But it never ceases to bring me to a sense of awe when I see the odd phenomenon of a tiny seedling pushing out into the sunlight. A tender shoot no bigger than my finger that breaks through all by itself. Now, I know that there are scientific explanations of how that can happen, but every time I see that stubborn shoot seems to me to be a miracle. Several years ago, when Reverend Susan and I were hiking on the John Muir Trail, there were parts of it that were barren, rocky, and no plant life whatsoever. But you'd be walking along the trail trying not to trip and fall, and all of a sudden you'd look down, and in the middle of dirt and rock, a little flower would be there, a lot like that, but in the middle of nowhere. So how do we show love? in the midst of hate? Let's emulate nature. Be that stubborn shoot in the cracks of life that you see each and every day. There is a man who often walks the streets near Desert Skies who has been around for years. Maybe you have seen him. He can often be seen walking his dog around and through our property. And we spoke for the first time this year at the flea market. We were out helping with parking and guiding traffic, and we heard the story of how he inherited his dog from his dad who had passed on not that long ago. And it was a story of how the dog got him up and moving and actually showed him the path his father had blazed around the church. And in fact, if you go out now, the youth are in the process of creating a walking path around the edge of our campus. And so Dan Elder is helping with that. And so you can see little green hash marks going. A lot of that is the path that this man and his father have helped us create through our property. Now, I can't tell you how many times I have seen that man, but there was something about the loving atmosphere at our flea market that got him to stop and open up and share a bit of his story. It was a bit like that flower pushing through the crack in the road toward the sunlight. He was drawn to what he perceived to be a joy-filled community where people like you, like me, just might be interested in his story. There was probably some explanation why he decided to stop and chat that day. And yet, in some small way, he appeared to me to be a miracle. So how do we show love in the midst of hate? Put a human face on the miracle and enjoy the interaction and hope and camaraderie that comes when you do so. And then we look to a more communal image, because we as a body often decide too soon where things can't grow. Anyone ever said something out loud and found out later to be proven wrong? Surely not there, we say. The rock is too hard, the stump is too dead, and there are times when we assume that whole groups of people simply cannot grow or thrive. Maybe it's the things we've been told, maybe it's things we've observed in the past, but we tend to put limitations on things. But you can try to keep people down. You can put all kinds of obstacles in their way, and yet there are some that still push through into parking lots, who break through rock where patches have failed. A shoot shall come out from the stump of Jesse. Who could ever imagine anything growing as they sat on a stump of utter despair? I sat there myself. Maybe you have too. You may be there now, a place where hope is cut off, where loss and despair have deadened your heart, where hate eats away at your very soul, not because you intentionally hate someone, but maybe because you just can't see things their way. And that's when God's Advent word comes to sit with us. A shoot shall come from the stump of Jesse, fragile, yet tenacious and stubborn. And it will grow like a plant out of dry ground. It will grow in the heart of a person cut off by hate or by sorrow or despair until one morning he or she will find it in their ability to look up once again. And it will grow in the hearts of a people who are told over and over again that they are nothing. The plant will grow, and it will break through places where flowers shouldn't grow. Martin Luther King Jr. called us to action, to this kind of breaking through the cracks. He said it perfectly. Love yourself. And that means rational and healthy self-interest. You're commanded to do that. That's the length of life. Then follow that
love your neighbor as you love yourself. You're commanded to do that. That's the breadth of life. And I'm going to take my seat now by letting you know that there's a first and even greater commandment. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. I think the psychologist would just say, with all your personality. And when you do that, then you've got the depth of life. And when you get all three of these together, King continued, you can walk and never get weary. You can look up and see the morning stars singing together and the sons and daughters of God shouting for joy. And when you get all those working together in your very life, judgment will roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. And when you get all the three of these together, the lamb will lie down with the lion. And when you get all three of these together, you look up and every valley will be exalted and every hill and mountain be made low. The rough places will be made plain, the crooked places straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. Whew. And all of God's people said,